everyone. We've got a really brilliant interview today with Beth. I'm going to hand over to her, let her introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her journey and some of the exciting projects she's been doing. So over to you, Beth.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to get this opportunity to have a chat with you. My name is Beth Kempton. I am an author, a producer of online courses for creative people. I'm a mother of 2 daughters. I absolutely love nature and the wilderness and adventure and lots of things that I don't really know what order that all goes in. And I found in the last couple of years I've been calling myself many different things as I've been trying on new hats, because for the last few years I've been behind the scenes mostly, producing courses for other people, and then I've kind of stepped into this new life as a creative professional myself, so learning lots as I go, but I hope some of those experiences can be of value to people today.
Oh, definitely, I'm sure it will be. And how have you found making the transitions between these different roles and wearing the different hats?
It's always interesting. No 2 days are different for sure. I think the most tricky thing for me has been the public face that comes with being a professional in the creative industries these days. You cannot be that writer, in my case, a writer who sits in their writing shed at the end of their garden and sends a book to a publisher and then just moves on to the next book. It's not how it works these days. And it's interesting, actually, someone at my publisher said that these days we don't just look for writers, we look for talent, as in entertainment talent. You know, you need to be able to speak on a big stage, you know, host a podcast, have a big social media following, or at least growing your social media following, have some kind of platform. There's all sorts of things that are part of it that involve you putting your face and name and opinions out in the world in a way that you can't just do within the safety of the pages of your book. And I think that was partly, I think I was head in the sand about that, and then realised, you know, I have to have a website with my name and face on it and all of that. But it's interesting because I've been producing courses for people who I've been asking them to do that over the past few years, and I've got a real sense of what it's like to be in their shoes. I think that is probably the biggest challenge. So not so much the juggling work, because that makes it really interesting, having different roles and different days to do different things. But I think the putting yourself out there is always going to be the most challenging thing, and I don't think that ever goes away, to be honest. You know, whatever scale it ends up as, you're still, if you're sharing your creativity with the world, you're coming from a vulnerable place, and not everyone's going to agree with you or like what you do, but hopefully more people do than don't, and that you just stay true to why you're doing what you're doing, and then you can just ignore the voices that you don't appreciate. I've actually been really lucky my book's my first book and had really amazing feedback, and it really helps, but I'm also trying to be really conscious about, I'm not writing in order for people to say those things. I'm writing in order to have a particular impact in somebody's life, and I think it's quite easy to get sucked into that criticism, positive or negative, you know, the feedback one way or the other, and be affected by it. And I'm really trying to let that wash over me, you know, take it when I need the confidence, but also just not make that why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Okay. And how did the book come about? Was it something that you've always wanted to do, or did somebody approach you about it?
It's quite a strange story, actually. I've always wanted to write a book, in that I've always loved writing from when I was little, but it's certainly not that I had a dream for this particular book, and it's taken years and it came about. What actually happened was I was incredibly busy to the point of overwhelm with all of my business, and having a very small child. She was about 18 months at the time, and being very heavily pregnant with a second, and just shelling out money left, right and centre to solve any problem, and I just got very caught up in saying yes to all the people that I was responsible to, but and not really giving any time to myself. And there was just one particular day when I collapsed on my bedroom floor, going, you know, what is going on? Is this the
one you speak about in the book?
Yeah, I run a company called Do What You Love, and right now I just want to go back to bed. And and it was a real moment of realizing that although I'm somebody who's really consciously tried to make decisions throughout my life to take me in a direction that makes me happy, also life can catch up with you when it starts to pick up pace too much, and that sometimes you need to take a step back. And I had this great opportunity of maternity leave to take this step back, and the day that I realised this, I actually started to have these flashbacks of my earlier life. I was quite an adventurer in my 20s and went all over the world, and I saw myself there and felt a real disconnect from who I was at that moment, and a sense of she had definitely freedom in her life and a lack of freedom in my life, and it was a really strange thing, and I really wanted to figure out what was going on. Like, why had I built my life in this way that was trapping me, especially for somebody who did what I did, didn't make any sense at all, and to understand whether other people were going through the same thing, which it turned out they were. many people are feeling trapped in their lives, and also what we could do about it. And so what happened, really the timing was incredible. I took 5 months off maternity leave. The first time around I had 4 days off.
Oh God.
I was in Edinburgh with a 10-week-old baby recording, like filming in the course the first time around. It was insane. And I think I was part of the problem, I just thought nothing would change. And of course, as you know, everything changes. So I just had to accept that. But so what happened was I had this break from maternity leave, 5 months, beautiful little second baby, a really happy summer, living in Brighton, walking up and down the seafront, thinking about this big question of freedom. It was the first time in a long time I'd had the time and space to think about something like that. And the idea just became something which felt like it could be a book.
Yeah.
Not in any real I need to make this happen kind of way, but it just felt naturally like it would make a book. And so I turned it into a book proposal just really as a project for myself on maternity leave. And I sent it around to a few friends, and my husband sent it to one of his friends who is a literary agent, mostly for novels, but as someone who's seen a lot of book proposals, we thought it would be great for her to have a look. And she phoned me up and said, I want to sell it for you.
Oh, wow.
And she ended up getting me a deal with my dream publisher, which was Hay House, and the rest is history. But it happened so fast. I mean, the little girl that I was pregnant with when I had that really low day has just turned 2.
Wow.
And the book is out. It's been out in the world for 5 months. So things happen really fast when it really felt like the universe was helping me in many ways in the writing process to bring that book to life.
Yeah.
I am a freedom seeker, and I really felt like I wrote myself free in writing that book. So it was for me as much as it's for everybody else.
Okay. Oh, that's such an amazing story.
Like many things in life, I couldn't have planned it.
Yeah, it's lovely when things like happen organically, and I think if you'd maybe sat down and made the decision to do it, it might not have happened the same way if you had all of that pressure trying to do it.
Absolutely. I think that's the key. I think sometimes we're so committed to our creativity and wanting to make a professional creative career work that we put too much pressure on ourselves, whether that's because of financial reasons or because of this is my thing and it has to work the way I think it's going to work. That's when we kind of kill the genius, I think. And that somehow taking the pressure off, whether that's by having a part-time job or just giving yourself a bit more of a gentle deadline, or allowing yourself to have an artist date, as Julia Cameron would say, all those kinds of things, they really matter. Because I think the brilliance with so much creativity is that you don't know what's coming, you don't know what's deep inside, and if you try and plan the route too much, how can you do that when you don't know what's coming? And so it's almost like your job is to make the space and allow it to emerge, rather than try and just dig one really small tunnel and hope that it goes down that way.
Okay. Can you take us right back to the beginning and talk us through the different stages of your career and how one thing progressed to the next?
Yeah, I mean, to go right back, when I was a child, I was very, very creative without giving it that kind of name. If I had a spare day, I would be in the dark room that my dad built in the garage, with my black and white film, turning it into these magical pictures.
Oh, wow. Do you remember how to do that? I might need some tips.
I don't know whether people still do that in dark rooms, do they?
Oh, well, I've just actually bought not one. I've got an obsession with these Diana mini cameras, doing lomography. So yeah, definitely. I think that's a trend that's coming back. So yeah, we might need a second follow-up.
Mine was about 35 years ago. I was doing that. So I was doing that, or I actually had a typewriter, not in the days that they look nice on Instagram, but when that's how you type. And I'm not actually that old. I'm only 40, but I had a typewriter, and I used to type play scripts and then direct them. You know, when I was about 8. Stuff like all sorts of stuff like that, or summer holidays, I just want a project and I'd make a scrapbook of everything I ate that holiday.
Oh my gosh.
Things like that. And that was just natural. That's what I love to do. And then I through a very strange series of events that you read about in Freedom Seeker, I ended up studying Japanese at university, even though I couldn't speak a word of it, as you do. And that really took me into, I went to live and work in Japan after university, and I ended up spending quite a long time in Tokyo, and fell into the sports industry, which is very, very different from the creative industry. It's very male dominated, and it's all about money and competition, all those things. And what I think the most important lesson I learned there was just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should do it. Mm-hmm. And I think I got really good at my job, and I did that for many years, and I had some amazing experiences, but I'd completely lost my connection to creative things. You know, we used creative thinking at work, but that was kind of the extent of it. And then one day, I don't know, about probably 10 years ago or more now, I picked up this book. I don't know how it got into my hands, but I remember lying in bed reading it, and it was called Flying Lessons. Are you still there?
Yep, I'm still there.
Yep, you've just gone off the video. It was called Flying Lessons by a mixed media artist from the US called Kelly Ray Roberts.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a story of how she became an artist. At about the age of 30, she thought that she couldn't run, and she ended up running. I think it was a half marathon. And she really surprised herself that she could do the things she thought she couldn't do. So then she thought, well, what about being an artist? Something she'd always wanted to do, but thought it was impossible for her. And so she started to explore that. And basically, she's ended up being one of the most popular mixed media artists in the US now. She has a massive, thriving business. And this book, it was a mixed media, kind of a demonstration book, but it also had a story woven into it. And I remember reading it and thinking, I really want to meet her, which makes me sound like a weird stalker. But you know, like sometimes you just get a real connection with someone when you read their story. And so I went online and I saw she was teaching at this workshop. So I booked myself a place, and then I realised it was in California, which is like 5,000 miles away. So I booked a plane ticket, and it's funny because that workshop, we joke, it was making a book, a really simple book, with lots of mixed media techniques and stuff in it, and it's like the world's most expensive book. It cost me about £3,000 to go and meet her and learn from her. But I went to this retreat, and it was in the shadow of this redwood forest in San Jose in California, and it was just one of those incredible experiences that I'll never forget. I remember a moment I was sat in the dining room surrounded by about 100 all American women, and it was just the most wonderful atmosphere. Everyone was so excited to be there, and so happy that they had connected with all these other people who were just like them and creative like them and had dreams like them. And I remember thinking, I want to feel in my work like I feel at this retreat right now. Okay. And I didn't know what that meant right then. I had some ideas, but no kind of big plan that just then. But I knew that I didn't want to forget that was a really important thing for me, that idea of connection and creative women doing amazing things. And one thing I did realise when I got back to the UK was that those women had probably all gone back home to their homes all over America on their own, away from this community of women, and gone back to their daily life and lost. They just had the memory of what they'd done, but probably gone back to their jobs and all of that. And I started to think, well, if they could do that creative thing as a job, as their own business, then they get to do that all day long. That's amazing. And maybe there's some things that I've learned in my work in the corporate world with, you know, some of the biggest names in the world, in sport, big brands, things that I could bring to the, you know, principles of business, that I could kind of connect these people with those ideas and help them make that dream a reality. I had absolutely no idea how I was going to do it. I didn't know what a blog was. It was just a concept. And the first thing I actually did was I came back and set up a blog, and I had a little target for myself of having 10 followers within a week or something, which, you know, that was quite a big thing after not knowing what a blog was. But I think there were 15 people in my class, and every single one of them followed my blog. So I was like, oh, smash that target. That was really exciting, the idea of the online world, which was really, really new to me. I mean, it was very early in the world as we know it now, the digital world. But and so the first thing I actually did was organise a creative retreat. And when I look back on it now, it's quite amazing. We had one of the founders of Etsy come and talk, and we had some amazing creative workshops and talks about business. And it was kind of a beautiful space for people to play with these dreams and figure out how they were going to make them a reality. But I figured out very quickly that the kind of luxury retreat that I wanted to run wasn't a very good business model. It's broke even, but, you know, we didn't make any money, and that was not going to be my thing forever. And at the same time, I was discovering about online courses. There were hardly any in the area of creativity and personal growth, but there were one or two, and I think my naivety helped me. And I was like, oh, I could do that. And so I created one, and it's very weird. My very first course, I was actually the teacher, and it still runs to this day. And it was called Do What You Love, and it was based on the idea that there's this theory of if you work on anything for 10,000 hours, you become an expert. And I was thinking, right, what have I done for 10,000 hours that isn't my job? And one of those things was study Japanese. I'm like, okay, that's not really going to help me in this area. And the other thing was go on adventures, which sounds crazy, but actually I was like, I'm pretty good at going on adventures and making adventures happen, maybe without always having a big budget, and just kind of being positive about opportunities in life. And my friends for many years have always said that all these crazy things happen to you. What is it that you do? I was like, I don't really know. That's an interesting thing to think about. And it ended up being my first online course called Do What You Love, and really things took off from there, because I created that, and it was a very surprising big hit from the first one, considering I had virtually no mailing list. I was like, where are all these people coming from? It's very strange. And then obviously with feedback each time, we made it better and better, and introduced video, and then updated the video, and it's become what it is today. And along the way, I ended up producing courses for other people who also didn't know how to do it, but really wanted to share their teaching with the world. And for a while, Do What You Love really became a production company for amazing creative people who want to teach online. And then over time, we've refined it. So now we have two major partnerships: makeartthatsells.com with Lily Rogers, and makeitindesign.com with Rachel Taylor. And then Do What You Love, which is dowhatyouloveforlife.com, my main site, where I teach, and also obviously is the home of books and workshops and all those kinds of things. So it's definitely been an evolution, and we've had many missteps along the way, but also many really amazing moments of, wow, we made that happen. And the best thing is always the stories of the creative people that have gone on to build these new lives for themselves, which is just the best thing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure that quite a few of them will actually end up listening to this as well.
Grateful for anybody who has ever taken one of our courses, because this is what happens in becoming the customer of something creative. You allow that creative person to do what they do.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's definitely this virtuous cycle, and it's a really lovely way, I think, of looking at your customers, and you as a creative person, as a designer or whatever, looking at the people who buy your things. They're allowing you to live this life that you want to live. And I think taking a moment sometimes to be grateful to them is really, really important on the way.
Did you ever have moments where you were just like, oh my God, what am I doing? I can't do this. I'm just going to stand here right now.
Yes. Day one.
Day 1, day 2, day 3.
Yeah. I think we definitely got into a rhythm. And what's really interesting was, I think at the time that I felt most comfortable I'm like, right, I know exactly what I'm doing. We're learning we're always learning. We're always looking out to what's going on in the industry and trying to keep up or be ahead of trend or whatever. And so I think the time that I got most comfortable and really confident about, I know what I'm doing, was the time that, if anything, I went off track away from what I actually love and following the money. It's really interesting. And I had to bring myself back and go, remember why you're doing what you're doing, and make sure that you're not making your decisions just about what's the most financially viable or important or whatever. And it's very interesting. And every time I do that and bring myself back and challenge myself, which is what makes life interesting, that's when I have that feeling all over again. I don't know what I'm doing. You have to be a beginner to do stuff that's interesting and makes you feel alive. So it's kind of an inevitable part of the journey, I think.
And do you have any like standout moments that just, I don't know, the moments that you look back and you think, wow, this was all worthwhile because of X, Y, and Z?
There was a moment on the stage at Ignite early this year. Ignite is Hay House's event for their authors. Hay House is my publisher. That I'd been to that event a year before as somebody in the audience, and seen these people up on the stage talking, no notes, telling stories, walking around with so much confidence, and talking about the books that they'd written and these big ideas they were having about the world and things. And I remember thinking, I really, really want to be on that stage. I already had a book deal with Hay House at that point, so I knew that it was, there is a possibility of it, but only 7 people or so speak at that event every year, and they have a lot of authors. So, it certainly wasn't a definite thing. And I really held that in my heart as something that I wanted to do along the way, to speak at that event. And I wrote the best book that I could at that time, and I took myself to Santa Fe in New Mexico to train with the very best speaking coach I could find in the world.
Wow.
Who is an amazing lady called Gail Larson, who teaches transformational speaking. So it's really storytelling from the heart with no notes. It doesn't mean you don't plan, but you don't have notes. And it's really how to speak that in a way that kind of changes people's minds. It's very, very powerful. So I did lots of things like that. And then I ended up being invited to speak at that event. And I remember being the day that it took place a couple of weeks before my book was officially published. But because it was Hay House's own event, they actually had some copies of the book in their bookshop ahead of the publication date. But it was, and I'd been to the printers actually to see my book come off the press, which was an amazing experience. And it came off next to the latest version of Harry Potter.
Oh wow!
Very exciting. Yeah, with this like super secret special edition cover that we'd seen. It was very exciting. And that was a brilliant experience. But my book has, the English version of the UK version of my book has sprayed blue edges. And that is something that was done in a different factory to the printing factory. And so I hadn't seen an actual finished copy. And when I turned up at the event place, they had, just before I went on stage, someone was like, "Oh, your books have turned up." So I walked into the bookshop and I saw them stacked up, and they kind of stand out as a big stack of blue. And I went on to and then I was like, I was onto the stage, and I was telling this story, and it was the first time I'd told this story of feeling trapped and then finding this way of being free, and how the book was a big part of that story. And I'm standing on the stage in front of 400 people, and my book is standing next to me. And it's really the first time I kind of made that connection in my head. Like, my daughter's not even 2 years old yet, and what a turnaround in my life in just 2 years. And I made it happen. And that's kind of crazy, and it's making me emotional. I don't want to cry, and I'm still talking, telling a story. Like, my brain's like on 3 channels, and it was a very weird experience. But that was really amazing. And then we had, it was funny. I came off the stage, and someone was like, "Right, you're going to sign books now." I'm like, book signing? Never done book signing before. And there was this queue of people round the corner, people crying, and we sold out of books. They were like, "We never sell out of books from first-time author." And
oh my goodness!
It was just the most wonderful day, and I got to meet so many lovely people who, many of whom, had been part of my journey as well. People who come to support me at the event, but also people like, "I never heard of you, but your story was amazing." And I'm sure they meant it in a nice way about you never heard of me, because everyone else was much more famous. But it was just a really incredible day, and I think it was really the first day after maternity leave and kind of getting back into the fray of work that I'd actually stepped onto a public stage in any way, and I just felt like I was naked. But it was terrifying, but also in the end, it was a really amazing experience. So that was definitely a moment I won't forget.
How long did you speak for?
20 minutes.
Oh wow, 20 minutes, no notes. That's amazing.
It's easy, but it's definitely the best way to go. And I did one recently in America that was, I think, 30. Again, no, and it's interesting. I had kind of notes on the side just in case, because it was longer, and then in the end, it's just like, it's so much better. Just tell a story. It's the best way.
Wow.
As you can see, I don't like to push myself at all. It's crazy, but
you've got to throw yourself into these things, and even when something's scary, the feeling that you get after you've gone through that and come out the other side is just amazing. And then, like you said, you know that, okay, I've done that one thing, what else can I do? So I think it's amazing.
I think the deeper the fear, the higher the high when you overcome it. Yeah, that's amazing.
Definitely. Like, I actually don't like doing these interviews. I get absolutely terrified, but after I've finished it, I'm always elated that I've gotten through it without tripping over myself too much. So definitely the way forward.
If you hadn't pushed yourself, then there might be one person who's listened to this that really connects with my story, for example, and pushes themselves to go and do something, which, everything has a ripple effect. Yeah. So that's good for you.
Don't say that yet. There's time for me to mess it all up. One of the other things I wanted to pick your brain about was work-life balance, because, like you say, you've got loads of things going on. Do you feel like you have some kind of a work-life balance? Do you think you've got that nailed, or is it an ever-shifting thing that you're always trying to get a hold of?
I feel like I know exactly what I need to. Like, I think I have the principles down pretty well. Like, I know what works and what doesn't. But I do take on too much. So this year has been really interesting. So Freedom Seeker came out in April, and I did something really stupid, which was what everyone does these days, and you're encouraged to do, which is give a pre-order special offer. So if somebody pre-orders your book, because that makes a massive difference on Amazon, if you have a big hit on your first day, then they get a special free gift, which is great. I mean, that's a really nice idea. But I offered a course of a certain value of money, which was more expensive than that Do What You Love, our flagship course. And I did that on a certain piece of advice, and then I realised afterwards, well, if it's twice the price, it needs to be twice the content. An unbelievable amount of work. The other course I spent 8 years, or 7 years, whatever, finessing, and then I had to create this whole course at the time that my first book was launching, and I was going on a book tour in America, and all this stuff going on, and I ended up like in this beautiful rented Airbnb in Portland in America, filming this course, because I just the timing of it was crazy. And so I think sometimes I do think I have more energy than I actually have. So that was a really big learning. And what happened actually was this August we took a lot of time off as a family. I turned 40 this year, and one of my presents was time at this amazing cookery school in Devon, River Cottage, and I just had a big chunk of time to myself as well as with my young family, and we've got into a much better rhythm, and I'm trying to keep that now. So I have the principles, but obviously we all get distracted.
Okay, that's good to hear.
One thing I would say is really, really important, which I do try and keep, is when I'm with my children, I'm with my children, and when I'm with my work, I'm with my work. And I really don't do the two I used to, and I think that was the heart of the overwhelm and stress and guilt and all of that, playing with my baby when my head was in my inbox is never a good idea.
And what about like, obviously you do a lot online and with Facebook groups, do you have a way of managing your time with things like that? Because obviously it can be quite intrusive with it being able to pop up on your phone, or just the fact that you've got access to all of these things all of the time. Do you have any kind of restrictions that you put on yourself with when you'll check emails or check Facebook messages and things like that?
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing I would say is most important is I have a team. So I don't do everything myself. If I'm the teacher, then absolutely I check that Facebook group which is one of the reasons why nearly everything that we do is for a set period of time. If I'm the teacher, I do 5-week courses or 8-week courses, whatever, because then I can be present in that time. And then outside of that time, I'm not in there. I think if you set up a lifetime access course, you are setting yourself up for trouble if you're supposed to be accessible to those people, because you have your own obligations outside of that. And it's really one of the most important things, I think, is that, say you're a designer teaching design, it's as important that you're a working designer as it is that you're a teacher.
Yeah.
And if you are teaching all the time, you can't be doing the design work, which is making you up to date on what's going on in the design world. So I think it's really important to separate those two things. And what I do in terms of email, apart from massively filtering out everything, so I use unroll.me to put all of my email subscriptions into one email a day, which I frequently delete without looking at it. I mean, I try not to get distracted by any of that stuff these days. But in terms of my project, so I said that we have Make Art That Sells and Make It in Design and then my own things. I set aside a different day for each of those. So, for example, Make Art That Sells, unless it's urgent, I only answer emails to my team on a Tuesday, which sounds a bit difficult, but actually everyone else has an expectation of when the reply is going to come. They know if it's urgent, they get an answer, but actually it means that Thursday, Friday, I'm actually working on a big proposal for a new course or something like that, not getting distracted by an email about, to sign off on something. Yeah. And that has made a massive difference to my work. And I think if you don't work that way, you think it's impossible. Oh, my clients need access to me, 24 hours a day. It's not true. What your clients need is for you to do the very best job that you can for them. Yeah. And if that means being really strict about your office hours, as it were, then in the end that's going to allow you to serve them better. So sometimes I think it's just an education thing or a discussion, and if that's what you want to do, then you also have to stick to that. So if you say I'm only emailing on Tuesdays and then you start answering emails on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays, then it's just confusing and nobody will respect what you said. But if you're as strict as you want other people to be, then it does work. And I think I was thinking a bit like the creativity thing. I remember when I was writing my book and I'd be working on something and then, my phone would ring or, I'd hear mummy from the other room or something. And I think of it like diving in the ocean for a pearl and reaching out to get that pearl. You nearly got it. You're just there. And then you get sucked up to the surface by something. And then the chances of you getting back down to the bottom of the ocean and finding that pearl are virtually nil. I mean, it's gone. Right? Yeah. And that doesn't serve anyone. So I take it really seriously to take myself. If I go to a cafe, with one job to do. I'm writing that magazine article. I'm doing that. I'm not leaving until I've delivered that project or that contract or whatever. And it makes a big difference, and it makes it so much more enjoyable because it's just tiring for your brain if you're switching with doing things all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing how difficult it can be to switch tasks, the amount of time you lose trying to get into the flow of something else when you've been pulled out of it.
I think one thing that we don't realise is we think that people are always thinking, they're always thinking about us, like, where's that email, where's that answer, where's that whatever. People are not. People are too busy with their own lives. Yeah. So if you just give people a deadline and you deliver to your deadline or slightly earlier, I think the more that you make those boundaries and stick to what you say you're going to do, the more people will respect your, time alone, time away.
Yeah, great advice. Speaking of advice, do you have any advice you would give your younger self if you could go back in time?
You know what? I think the most important piece of advice I'd give myself straight out of university is buy a house as soon as you've got any money whatsoever. Seriously, I think I had like this really kind of I had very strong wanderlust and I loved adventure. And I did a ton of traveling, and I think I gave myself this false belief that to have a mortgage is to be tied. And, obviously it doesn't mean that at all. It just means you've invested some money and that money grows over time. And I do think that is the one thing, that's certainly something I'll be telling my daughters. That freedom is not about, it's the same, that freedom is not about having no rules whatsoever. It's about making your own way within the rules that work for you, and if the rules don't work for you, then you can change the rules or do something about them. But it doesn't mean anarchy in the same way that having a mortgage doesn't mean that's it, you're stuck forever in one place and can never go anywhere else on the earth. And I think I was so the other way in terms of I need to be free and independent and off away from my family. And right now I'm actually living in the town I grew up in, and if you told me that when I was 20, I'd be like, no way, I'm never going back. Not that this town's lovely, But I was just so desperate to get away because of the big wide world out there.
Yeah.
And I think as our lives change, it's really important to rethink things in the context of what's going on at this point in our lives.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably not what you're expecting to say, but that's a big one.
No,
And
it's
also,
good. Good sound advice.
For me, I think I did a lot of stuff right when I was younger. Sometimes I think my younger self was wiser than my older self in terms of you know what she was? Maybe not wiser. She was braver.
Yeah.
And I think when I had children, I felt that I had lost a lot of my courage, and it's coming back. But I would definitely, when I was younger, I would literally go anywhere to talk to anyone, try anything, and I think about things more now.
Yes, yeah.
And I want to get more of that, brazen bravery back again.
That's very interesting. That's very true for me as well, actually.
Does that resonate? I mean, do you feel the same?
Yeah, definitely. And this, especially about leaving home as well. I did the exact same thing. Never thought I'd come back. As soon as I was pregnant with my son, me and my husband moved back. We'd moved like 5-6 times to different cities, and yeah, we came straight back. And it's just, I think it was that I knew home, and I knew what to expect, and I knew that it would be a nice childhood and a nice upbringing. But now I feel as though I don't, with the bravery thing, like I'd take a job in a foreign country or in another city without really a second thought about it. But now there's obviously, I'm thinking about, I've got kids, I don't want to uproot them. I always overthink things, yeah. Do you do that as well?
I do. I'm trying very consciously not to, but it's hard, I think, when you have other people to consider, not just yourself. But I think there's a real wisdom in the part of you that makes spontaneous decisions, and you need to, I think, trust both of them. So you need your analytical brain to have its moment, and you need your intuition to have its moment, and allow both of them to inform your decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a key word there, intuition, because a lot of the time when you're younger, it feels like it's a whim, but maybe it is more intuition. And I always felt like if I took a risk and if something was scary, that it would be worth it and that it would work out in the end. Whereas now I think I have that second thought where I'm like, well, what if it doesn't work out? Where I didn't have that before.
Yeah. I have to say though, I agree with you, but also I think that having your own business for several years, I think you get to a point where you're like, you know what, if it doesn't work out, I've started something from nothing before, I could do it again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's a really important thing, especially in this day and age, and the economy as it has been for years, to have that confidence in yourself that you can make things happen. You don't have to rely on somebody else giving you a job.
Yeah. I think even with design as well, you kind of sometimes get to the point where you make something amazing and you feel like you can never make that again, or what if I can't do something as good as that? And it's like, well, I made something literally out of nothing. I can do it again. I think it's sometimes hard to remember that. Is there anything else still on your big wish list, or anything that you still want to do?
Absolutely. I think the number one thing I really want to do right now is make the most of the precious moments of my children's childhood. And that sounds kind of a obvious thing to say, but it does go so fast. And I think what I've come to realise is that a lot of the things that I love to do, I can do with them.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be doing, time for me, time for them. Of course I need time for me too, but it's not either or. There's a lot of things that can be together, whether that's baking or making something, or I'm writing something while they're trying to, they're doing their writing. I say writing, and one of them's 2 years old. But, one of her first words was right, and she loves to pick up a pen and make so I think that is, right now, that is my number one thing. And I think probably a part of that, like creating a safe and secure home where they feel happy, is part of the reason why I've come back to where I grew up and all of that. I know that in the future there are so many places left in the world to see and things to try and all that, but I'm quite content right now that can wait, and that there are adventures to be had at home.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a really insightful interview. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are. And I'm going to make sure I put all the links for where people can find your audiobook, the Kindle book, and the actual real physical book. And I'll also pop in links to your website as well. If people want to follow you or get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
You can find me on Instagram at Beth Kempton. You can find me on Facebook at Do What You Love XX. websites, there are 4 that might be of interest. That sounds like a lot, I know, but BethKempton.com, which is the one where you can see my face in a really big way, and then you'll see why I was intimidated by putting it out. DoWhatYouLoveForLife.com, which is where you find the courses that I teach. MakeItInDesign.com, which is with Rachel Taylor, and MakeArtThatSells.com, which is with Lila Rogers, the art agent. And they're all places where there's lots of courses that you can sign up for and get amazing education, but there's also lots of free resources and inspiration on all of those to help you on your journey to becoming a creative professional, or just living a more creative life, which is, I think, a
just
happier life.
Important. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this. I think it's so important to share our stories, because from the outside our lives can all look shiny and easy, and they're really not.
No.
If you're doing the vulnerable thing of living a creative life. So thank you so much.